Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Correlation Nation. Today we're going to be breaking down UFC 319, Dricus du Plessis going against Chimaev, and this is a pretty good card. Now, I want to start with just saying that if you're trying to understand how to break these fighters down or how they're going to match up stylistically so you can understand better how this fight or how these fights are going to play out, this is the place to be. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and start just kind of going over this card, seeing how many fights there are, and then we're going to jump right into the breakdowns. So, it seems that, most of these fighters have made weight. I did see that it looked like Brian Battle missed weight because I was looking at the cancellations and it looks like that was a fight that was scrapped. So you do have one of the Ultimate Fighter fights has fallen off, canceled. I'm not exactly sure why. King Green was injured. He's on crutches. He's not able to make the walk. So that fight was scrapped. And then you have Brian Battle, missed weight. That fight was scrapped. And then Aldrich was injured, but they did they found a replacement fighter for Carini. So that she will remain on the card. But, all in all, it is what it is. Like I said, most of these fighters did make weight. I'm a little curious. Let's look at the Brian Battle deal real quick, because I was pretty sure he was actually going up a weight class. I may be wrong about this, but this guy just can't make weight apparently. He had gone down. Let's pull this up. It should say, right? Details. Fighting at 170, weighed in at 175. Yeah, and then he did go up. He went up to 185 and came in at 190. So, Brian Battle, I think, is ultimately a pretty good fighter. Like, he's a fighter's fighter because, when you break him down skill for skill, he's relatively well-rounded. Like, he can do a little bit of everything, but he's not really great at any one thing. And he's just kind of a guy that is able to stay alive and just kind of outlast his opponents a lot of times. But that's a conversation and a discussion for another day, because realistically he's just not on the card no more. So with that being said, let's get back to the card. And then we got Elibi. I'm not sure how to pronounce this guy's name, to be honest with you. I did not watch Ultimate Fighter, but I did break him down the best that I could based off some of the film that I found. And he's going against Joseph Morales. So let's hop over to our notes of the guy, and you'll see that he's a fairly light-footed striker. He's a guy that kind of just goes he's either going forward or he's going backwards. He does have a little bit of lateral movement, but generally it's straight forward or straight back. That's something that I kind of picked up on him. Fights with pace and pressure. He leads with a nice teep kick, solid low kicks, likes to throw the right cross, and then a left hook combo. He has a nice switch knee, flying knee. Takedown defense looks good. He has a good sprawl, heavy hips, and really good balance. And he also has a good cage push. The other thing that he does fight at a high pace. It seems that he has pretty good cardio. And then when we hop over to, I think it was Joseph, right? Let's pull him up. Joseph this is a guy that was in the UFC earlier. I think he fought Davison Figueiredo. But anyways, light-footed striker, has solid footwork, good movement. Striking is okay. He has a solid left side kick, decent right front kick, and a low kick. He has a high guard, basic combinations. Takedown defense looks okay. He does have good balance. Scrambles well. He has an active guard, but he can settle on bottom. He has some traditional wrestling takedown ability, but it's not great. He floats okay with moderate ground and pound. So I think he's another guy that's like, he's relatively well-rounded. He's not really like, I would say, like, if you were to talk about his best skill, it is probably his grappling. But, he implements pretty good footwork, has pretty good movement on the feet, but he doesn't have great striking overall. He doesn't have great pace. And really, I think the way this fight's going to play out is the other guy's really just kind of better everywhere you take this fight, outside of like maybe just pure like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I think that, his pace and pressure, and then just the ability to defend. Like, if he's able to get to the ground, just the ability to defend a lot of the submission attempts, I think is going to win Alabi the fight. So I am going to go with him. And exact outcomes, I'm not real keen on an outcome of this fight. There's smaller guys, ground and pound. Yeah. I would say, the over, or, probably by decision is your most likely outcome of this fight, but I think that's pretty hard to tell. But nonetheless, I am going to go with is it Idris? I'm not sure how to pronounce this guy's name. I should have really paid attention to that. So forgive me, please forgive me. But we are going to side with him. I think he's going to win this fight. And we're just going to go ahead and move on to the next fight. So we got Carini Silva going against Dion. I don't know if that's Diony Barbosa. I know it's Barbosa. I think that these two have fought previously, like really early in their careers. Let's pull them up. Carini. So Carini is light-footed striker. She has good in and out movement, not really trying to maintain range. She's big. She's like a big athlete. Fights behind a nice front kick. She has a clean 1-2, solid high kick. She's a tenacious wrestler / grappler. Probably more on the grappling side, but she is tenacious overall. She's a very active grappler. She's dangerous, has good entries on takedowns, but she has poor cardio management. In an MMA, when the skill set is close and competitive, cardio is just king. It outweighs a lot of other things. I mean, there's other things that come into this, but cardio is kind of king. Barbosa, pull her up. Fairly light-footed striker. She has 1 round of range management. That's, she's not really trying to maintain range after that. It's not that she's not trying to. It's just like you can just see there's a clear difference in how she fights in round 1 to round 2. She doesn't offer much at range. She has a decent right cross, decent knees in the clinch. She's heavy on her front foot. Seems to have an uneducated guard. Has some takedown ability with some control. A bit of ground and pound. Decent grappler with some submission upside. And does she fade? That's more of a question. And I think it's just due to the fact that she doesn't really have the same game plan after round 1. It seems her cardio is not able to support her, what would you call it? Like your game plan or whatever. So, that's a little bit concerning. And I think ultimately, this is a close fight. But I am going to lean with Carini. I mean, she's the favorite. And I just think that she's a much more dynamic fighter, all in all. But ultimately, this, it could just kind of come down to who's got the better cardio. But I'm certainly gonna just lean with Carini. Especially since I'm already concerned with Barboza's. Let's see who she's fought recently. Yeah, so she beat Carini in 2019, which really is, yeah, I mean, it's a long time, so they've developed quite a bit, but it's not that long. I mean, you're 6 years ago. Let's pull up Carini real quick, just to... Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a tough fight to call because, I think ultimately Carini's got a pretty big advantage on the feet. You might not think so, but I really do believe that she's just a much more dynamic striker, a lot more powerful, and I also think that she is obviously an aggressive grappler, and so that could bode well for her. But I think going against Barboza, the thing is Barboza's never lost to a submission. They fought before, and so I don't see that as a likely outcome. But it could happen, you know what I mean? Obviously, submission, what it comes down to is, one, it takes somebody actually attempting the submission, and Carini, I think that if it's on the ground, that she's going to do that. So it could certainly happen. I just think that her easiest path to victory is going to be trying to keep it on the feet. But I'll have to watch this back and really, really look at it, because Carini not really trying to maintain distance is, another thing. We'll have to see what kind of game plan they implement. But I'm going to go with Carini on this. And I don't know that there's a safe way, because, you could play the over, but I think that both of them are dangerous enough that, Carini's aggressive style could call for this fight ending soon, but Barboza could also just defend a lot of that, and then it could go long. So I don't think that you're going to be real confident in, an over or an under, honestly. And I think that the best way to look at it is Carini's probably just the money line, which probably isn't a great number. And, yeah, outside of that, I think it's women's MMA. These are two pretty good prospects all in all. I think enjoy the fight. Don't have a lot of confidence either way. I'll be rooting for Carini. I just think that, she's a more exciting fighter, and I would like to see her, learn to manage her gas tank. And I think she has the skill set to be a real contender if she's able to get her cardio management under control. So I'm going to lean with Carini Silva. And yeah, I don't really have a method of victory. I just think that she's going to win the fight. Moving on. Edson Barboza going against Ricard Close. This is a pretty fun fight. Two vets. Barboza's been in the game a long time. Close has two. They're both up there in age. Close, I think, is just a little bit younger. A lot less experience, more due to injuries and stuff throughout his career. But let's pull up old Edson real quick. Actually, we have him right here. Fairly light-footed striker, has some bounce and lateral movement, tends to sit on his punches. He's a kick-heavy guy, so yeah, he tends to set his feet quite a bit. Solid left jab, but tends to throw wide power punches, hooks to both levels. So he does throw a lot of hooks to the body as well as upstairs. He has dynamic kicks, teep, spinning wheel kick. He's strong clinch game. He uses knees. And he's a pretty sound grappler. You know, he's a guy that generally can live. So, and he's a guy that can fight long. He's proven that time and time again. He can fight long. So, let's pull up close. Fairly light-footed pressure striker, heavy pressure, but low volume. So, you know, he's got like a measured pressure, kind of stays in your face, but not a ton of output. And then he does switch stance pretty well. Lots of feints, trying to draw out his opponent for counters. Solid kicks at range. He has a left front kick, side kick. Puts together combinations in the pocket. Can end with a knee. Pretty strong clinch game, cage push and knees. I think that I just for me it's Edson. You know, it should be a fun fight, but all in all, I think that Edson's just going to put more out there. If I had to guess. Let's pull up Edson just real quickly and see how many times he's been knocked out. Only knocked out 4 times. When were they? Tagiga. Justin Gaethje, yeah, he's a big power puncher. Kevin Lee, Dr. Stoppage. Yeah, I think that for me, this is Edson all day. I think that Drakar's kind of path to victory here is to catch him with a clean counter, knock him out. But when we pull up Drakar, the thing that you're going to see is this guy doesn't have a ton of finishes throughout his career. You know, one of them being a slam against Joe Selecki. You know, knocked out Brandon Jenkins. You know, he has 1, 2, 3 of his knockouts came like early in his career against much lower level competition. Probably more than that. And so I don't really think he's going to knock him out. And I think that he's going to have a difficult time beating Barbosa. But this is another fight where I do want to say that it's going to be very, very difficult to have a ton of confidence because of these guys at their age. Is, you know, closest 37 and Barbosa's like 39, I think. Yeah, 39. Barbosa's probably going to be the bigger guy. And we're going to go with him. I'm going to take Barbosa. Let's see how many finishes he's had lately. Yeah, I mean, this guy could finish a fight at any point. I think it's a close enough line that you could just feel good about. Like, he might even be, okay, he's a slight favorite. That might not be an accurate line, but it's kind of a pick-em at this point. And I don't have a problem with just money lining Edson. I think that that's the way I look at it. And then we have Alex Hernandez going against Chase Hooper. This is 2 completely different styles of fighters. You have a striker and a grappler, basically. Let's pull these guys up, see what we have. Alex Hernandez. Hernandez. Something must have happened. There must be a space or... Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, Alex Hernandez. This guy is a light-footed striker. Good movement, poor range management. He's an explosive striker, has a nasty body kick. Boxing is pretty clean, but has a tendency to throw everything with power, extending himself. He can be taken down, works to get up. He fades late. And then when we go to the other side, Hooper, this guy is a flat-footed striker, next to no technical footwork. Boxing is slow and wide. He has been, this is kind of an issue. He has shown to be a willing brawler. I've seen that, and he has a questionable chin. But he is long, and he does carry power. He's an aggressive grappler. Will look to get the fight to the mat. He's a good transitional grappler with submission upside. And when I say that, like, yeah, he's a legit grappler that will basically, if he's not going to stand there and like brawl with you, and I hope he doesn't, because he needs to learn that unless his striking skill set improves dramatically or whatever, like drastically, then like he needs to stop doing that. Like, do not try to stand and bang with these guys. Like, there's a good chance Hernandez could just knock this dude out. But, you know, this is a fight that I'm going to lean with the grappler because I don't know. I think that, you know, he will eventually break him down, you know, as long as he keeps a good game plan, doesn't try to stand and trade with him for like extended periods, and his goal and his game plan is literally like just do whatever to get this guy to the ground. He's going to get him down, more than likely eventually submit Alex Hernandez. Let's pull him up, see if he's been submitted. Only submitted one time, and it was against Moicano. Yeah. Now, I will say this. This is a fight that I think ultimately you just bet the under. That's the way I see it, is like this fight just doesn't go. Fight doesn't start round 3, whatever the under may be. Because, again, it's a tale of two tapes. You have, you know, one guy that's an explosive striker, clearly can knock out Chase Hooper. When we look at Chase Hooper and pull this guy up, Chase Hooper is only been knocked out once. You know, like I said, he is a willing brawler. He's not just going to quit on himself. But, you know, Steve Garcia, that was in 2000, so he's had 3 years to kind of learn from that. Yeah, I'm going to lean with Chase Hooper. I'm going to go by finish. More than likely, it's by submission. I think that, like I said, you know, at this point, he's old enough and fought long enough that he should understand there's a game plan. Follow it. Don't try to stand and bang with Alex Hernandez. Alex Hernandez can knock you out. And I'm going to believe that, you know, he knows that. So, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I was going to say I'm not really sure if Hernandez is like savvy enough to defend all the submissions. You know, like, you know, yeah, he's only been submitted once, and he has fought some pretty solid grapplers. Yep. Yep. I think I just stand with what I said. We'll lean Chase Hooper. He'll break him down, eventually get this fight to the ground, and either TKO him like really, really late when he's tired, or he'll be able to find a submission relatively quick, you know, within 2 rounds, I would think. And so I would feel pretty confident looking at the under of this fight, but, you know, also understanding that, as I mentioned already, Alex Hernandez could pretty easily knock this guy out as well. So it could really go either way, and so that's why I see the under is probably the more realistic or not, like, I wouldn't say realistic outcome, but like more confident pick for me. I think looking at the under is probably the best way to look at it. And we'll move on to the next fight. Following fight, we have Jessica Andrade going against Lupita Godinez. Let's pull these girls up. Oh, there might be some. Yes. Let's just put on Josh. Okie dokie, here we are. Alright, Jessica Andrade is plotting pressure striker. She has good speed and big power for the division. Has decent striking. She has a solid low kick, but everything she throws with her hands is heavy and wide, basically. She tends to carry her hands low. Has some decent wrestling ability, but isn't very good off her back. And she's just kind of, she's compact, but she's kind of a brute, like a bully. That's kind of her style. It's like a bully. And let's pull up Lupita. Lupita Godinez. She's fairly light-footed striker. Measured pressure. She has decent range management. Technical counter boxer. She has a high guard, but kind of has low output. Decent kicks at range, front, side, and low. She uses sparingly, so she doesn't throw the kicks low. She is more of a traditional boxer. She's a sound grappler that scrambles well. This one's a pretty tough one. Again, both girls are pretty skilled. I think that from a technical aspect, you got to go with Lupita. I think she's the more technical and superior fighter. But she lacks the aggression, which is something that Jessica Andrade has. And so, but the thing is, this is where, for me, it's interesting, is I do believe that Lupita has the physicality to match Andrade. Like, she's not going to be bullied by her. And so I'm going to go with Lupita. I think, like I said, just her being more technical and also being able to match her physicality. I think that I would go with Lupita on this. And I also wouldn't think it would be like a terrible look to just look at the over. But, it's women's MMA. Really anything can happen. Lupita has shown to be a little bit more assertive at times, but I don't think she's just going to come out and finish Andrade either. So, but, there's a world that it could happen. And so this is a fight that I'll look at Lupita. I think that the line's probably close enough that, again, it's kind of a pick'em, minus 150. I guess not a pick'em, but, it's a close enough line that you could just money line that. That's the side I would be on. I don't really have any issues with Jessica. I just think that Lupita's the more skilled fighter in this fight. So, moving on to the next one. So we have this kid, Susurkayev or however you pronounce this guy's name. Just fought on Contender Series. And proved to be, he was a first round knockout. I think it was a body kick or something. I don't even think I seen the fight. But he's going against Eric Nolan. Now, Eric Nolan, unfortunately, I don't really have any notes on this guy. I didn't see a ton of film on him. So I thought, well, this was kind of just scabbed together really, really quickly. I'm going to go with Surkayev because I think that, in my opinion, I'm not sure if Eric Nolan's as good of a fighter as even the guy that this guy just fought him on the Contender Series. Maybe he is, but let's pull up Susurkayev's notes real quick because there's a few things about him I want to mention that is going to, in my opinion, make him a contender like long term. He has a lot to prove, but I do believe that his skill set is going to help him in the long term. So let's pull this guy up real quick. He's light-footed pressure striker, but he has good range management. And the range management, to me, is something that's going to be really, really important long term, because he has nasty striking. He has nasty kicks at range. He has a right side kick, high kick, and teep kick, all nasty. And I believe he finished that fight with the teep to the body. Boxing looks solid. He has a nice left jab, a straight right cross. He will throw in flurries. You know, he does carry his hands low, but he has good head movement. And he also has a good flying knee. He can be a willing grappler, which he looks very raw and not great positionally. But his takedown defense looks pretty bad technically, but he does have good balance. And then he fades, and that was more of a question mark because he does seem to kind of fade a little bit later. But again, there's a lot we don't know about this guy as of right now. But the one thing we do know is that he has devastating striking and he has good range management. So it'll be interesting to see how this guy fares long term. I'm going to lean with him in this pick. I'm just going to say him. And let's pull... I mean, Nolan's already lost like 3 times in 11 fights, which isn't a great look. Never been knocked out, though. Yeah, I'm not real sure about that guy. Like I said, I don't really know a whole lot about him. Yeah, we'll just take him. You know, I don't know what the round 1 KO or under 1.5. I'm not sure what all that stuff looks like. That's probably the stuff I'd be looking at. But I wouldn't be putting too much into it, just simply because, like I said, this fight was kind of scabbed together really, really quickly. And, you know, for me, there's a lot I don't know about Nolan. And I'll be certainly looking to see what other people have to say about him, because I'm not that sure, just to be quite honest with you guys. So I'll probably take some pokes at it, but all in all, I think it's something I want to just kind of stay away from. Plus, I think that this guy's like a huge favorite, so there's probably not great value on it anyways. And with that, I'll just, I'll pick him and just, get some notes on this other guy as we go through the fight if it lasts more than 1 round. And we're going to move on to the next fight. We have Gerald Meerschaert going against Michael Olejniczuk. And this is another fight that's tale of 2 tapes. You think have a, Gerald, I guess he's got some decent striking on the feet, but ultimately at heart he's a grappler. He's going to look to get a submission. And then you have Olejniczuk, which is primarily a boxer, doesn't really offer much outside of that. So let's pull these guys up. Gerald. Okay, so Gerald is a fairly light-footed fighter. I don't know how to fight, but he's a fairly light-footed fighter. He has decent footwork. He does have some lateral movement. He has basic, fundamental boxing. It's slow, but he has solid power. He has a heavy low and side kick at range. It is pretty heavy, I noticed. But he doesn't force wrestle. He lets the fight kind of come to him, but will look to grapple. He doesn't force it, but he'll definitely, be looking for the opportunity to grapple. He's good in transitions, and he has submission upside. He's a guy that, he will outclass most guys on the ground. Not all. There are some guys that are just a tier above him, but this guy will outclass most people in MMA. And then when we look at his fight, his fight. Ola. Oleg. Dun, 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 dun. All right. Light-footed pressure striker. He's aggressive. Boxing is solid, a bit wide, but he uses a lot of movement. Slips well. He has a powerful left. His initial takedown defense is okay. He has a decent sprawl, but he can be taken down. And grappling defense is horrid. This guy will get... And that's why, again, this is a fight where you just look at the under, this fight's not going. There's no way this... if there's one thing I had to say about, this entire card as of right now as I'm going through this that I'm, really, really confident in, is this fight does not see the cards. Because either Michael is putting Gerald to sleep or Gerald is submitting this guy. And I'm going to go, as far as, who I'm picking... It's tough. It's real tough. But I think Gerald can get this fight to the mat and probably submit him. That's the way I'm going to look at it. That's what I think is going to happen. But that under fight doesn't go. That's happening. Okay? That's freaking happening. And we're just going to go on to the next fight. Should be a fun fight. That's what you get. There's a few fights like that on here. Now, the next fight we have is going to be Tim Elliott going against Kai Asakura. And Kai is only this is his second fight into the UFC. He fought, his literally debut was the title fight, I believe. And then when we look at Tim Elliott's been in the UFC for a long time. He's a vet. Yeah, he's got, some losses. His record doesn't look great. But this guy's fought some of the best guys in MMA, you know what I mean? So I'm a pretty big fan of Tim. I like this guy quite a bit. He's a dog, man. I like Tim quite a bit. So let's pull him up and let's talk about this fight. See how we think this is going to play out. Tim Elliott, here we have him. He is a light-footed striker. He has good movement. He kind of, does his back and forth deal. Boxing is decent. He has a high guard, solid head movement, but it's a bit wide. Fights with good pace and pressure. He's strong in the clinch. He has a good sprawl, good knees. And I will mention some of those knees and stuff that he throws are pretty questionable because they're borderline illegal now. The rules have changed a bit, but that always varies from, commission to commission or whatever. And so, but he'll throw him. He has good wrestling, scrambles pretty well. He has an active guard, but he can't settle. I don't think that's going to be an issue here. So going on to his opponent. Is it KIA? Oh, that's alright. It's KAI. Alright, this guy is fairly light-footed striker. He has solid evasive footwork, but has a tendency to leap into his strikes when moving forward. Has good speed and power. Guard seems uneducated. Hands kind of out of position. You really love that. He has well-timed knees, and they're pretty devastating. Pretty nice counter right cross. Otherwise, not very good off his back foot. Seems to sprawl and scramble quite well. Let's go back to these guys real quick. I want to look at Tim and see this guy out of all his fights, out of all the killers he's fought. And let's look at some of these guys. Sumadarji. Yeah, not a super well-rounded fighter, but, he's got pretty good striking. I think his striking might be better than Kai's. He might not be quite as explosive, but all in all, I think, yeah. Tagir Lumbeka, good fighter. I'm looking to see. Davison Figueiredo wasn't able. I guess he subbed him in the first, so he didn't really live through that too long. Demetrius, went 5 rounds with him back when. This is what I think, and like wholeheartedly, I believe that Tim's going to win this fight. There's a world where Kai is able to catch this guy with a knee or something and knock him out. Sure, there's a lot that's going to have to go into that in order to happen. I think that Tim is. He's just a proven guy that will outwork most guys, and I think your way of beating this guy is to either be. So I think you have to be somebody that can literally be super well-rounded and just outwork him. And there's not going to be, I think, like, you get into the top 5 guys, some of those guys can do it. But I could see, like, honestly, Tim Elliott even fighting like Pantoja is not the freaking, in my opinion, it's not the craziest thing. Yeah, I think Pantoja, probably outworks him long run, probably does get a submission because he can match his pressure, pace. He's aggressive, and he's a better submission artist. His BJJ is just better than Tim's, and so I could see him, eventually getting to the submission. But I don't see that being the case with this guy right here. So yeah, there's a world where Kai gets a knockout, lands a perfect knee or something like that, or whatever. But I think a lot has to happen in order for that to play out. And I do believe that Tim is probably going to be able to outwork this guy. And 10 decisions, so he does go to decision quite a bit. Doesn't have a ton of knockouts. Yeah, I mean, you can play Tim like, let's see, how many times is this guy? The thing is like, when you watch, Kai's freaking not very good off the back foot. Not at all. And he gets punched a freaking lot. Heck, I don't even know. You might take Tim by knockout. I don't know what that line looks like. I think Tim's going to win. I think it's hard to say exactly how it plays out. These guys are all going to be all over the place for sure. I think it's a fun fight. It is a fun fight. But, I'm going to side with Tim on this one. Moving on, we got Jared Cannonier going against Michael Venom Page. This one's a hard one. For me, this one's really, really hard because I could see it playing out 2 different ways. Let's pull up Jared. Jared Cannonier. This man is a light-footed striker. He has solid footwork, measured pressure, basic fundamental boxing, fights behind a nice 2-level jab. He'll throw it, high and to the body. Pretty good head movement, good power. He has heavy low kicks at range, will clinch, wrestle a bit, and he is strong. And then we look at Michael. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why boy ain't popping up. Let's just put Page. Maybe it's not spelled that way. Huh. Whatever. He's light-footed striker, measured pressure, range management, throws long straight punches, leaping in and out. He's fast. Initial takedown defense is pretty good. Can be taken down. He works to get up, but he can be. I don't know why I put outclassed. I meant like outworked. see if we can get to this. What's put outworked? Okay. He can be outworked. And this one's tough. It's real tough. You know, initially I kind of wanted, you know, you're like, oh, Michael's range management. You've seen him do it to other guys like, you know, Kevin Holland or whatever. It really, to me, this is going to come down to Cannonier's game plan. You know, is he going to be a willing participant in a slugfest? Is he going to try to stand with the guy? Boy, I hope not. I mean, if he wants to win, I hope not. Michael Venom Page, you know, I didn't really watch him outside the UFC. I've seen some of his highlights. You know, I know the guy was a pretty exciting, dynamic striker outside of the UFC. But you have to take into account that part of that is because his level of confidence is much higher against lower level competition, and he was able to try things that in the UFC will get him put in a bad predicament. And so because of that, you've seen him become a little bit more of a point fighter in the UFC. You know, he's a guy that's going to try to stay on the outside a little bit more, pick his shots, and just mind his P's and Q's. And he's had a lot of success with that. Now, Cannonier's a you know, top tier athlete. He's a contender. He's a good fighter. He's well rounded. And I think that if he comes in with the game plan of close the gap, get this guy to the ground or into a clinch scenario and kind of just beat up on him, I think he's going to be the bigger, stronger guy. Like, he might not be longer, like his frame might not be necessarily bigger, but he's going to be the much bigger guy. He should be. And he should be able to outwork this guy. But it really comes down to whether he's going to close that gap or not. And that's something we don't know. We don't know what his game plan is. It's a hard fight to pick. It's a really, really hard fight to pick. Maybe the hardest one on here. Let's look at these guys. It's so hard. I don't know that you can trust Cannonier, like just trying to grapple the whole time. That's the thing I struggle with. But I think that's his path to victory. I don't know. We'll look at the over on this one. And that's it. That's all I know. I'm not confident in this. I'll do a little bit more on it. I'd like to see him at the weigh-ins and then just kind of go from there. But, you know, ultimately I think this is extremely hard to predict. And I think that it probably reaches round 2, probably over 1.5. Pretty good chance it probably goes to decision. But it's hard telling. Okay. I'm going to take MVP by decision. And that's mostly just because I cannot trust that Cannonier will grapple the whole time, because I think that's his path to victory. You know what I mean? And even if he could do that, you know, there's a world he could put Michael away, you know what I mean? But I just don't know. I just can't trust it. So with that being said, I'm gonna go Michael Venom Page by decision. and then we'll move on. Let me get a drink. All right. We've got Jeff Neal going against Carlos Prates, and this is a fun fight. Pull up Jeff. What the heck? What the heck? I don't know what the heck just happened. All right, here we go. Neal. Jeff Neal. This guy is a light-footed striker. He has good movement, solid boxing. He has a high guard, left cross followed by an overhand right. He does have pretty good blend of speed and power. He will clinch and use dirty boxing. Decent takedown defense. He has good balance. And then when we go over to Prates, this guy is fairly light-footed striker. He has measured pressure and decent range management. He does carry his hands pretty low, but he has pretty good head movement. He slips pretty well. He moves around quite a bit. He fights long. He has a solid right jab, nasty left cross. That's his big power punch, is that left cross. And then he has a heavy heavy backside kicks, and that's to all levels. So his left leg's typically, he does switch stances, but typically his left leg's his back leg, and he throws some nasty kicks all levels. He has a frontside push kick, he kind of fights out of that Muay Thai where he kind of bounces with his right foot out, bounce with his right foot kind of up, and he will pull that foot up and do kind of a push kick with it. He has devastating knees, good takedown defense. He uses a cross face and good balance and stuff, so he does have pretty good takedown defense. And I don't think this is a fight where we're going to see it. There's a world where Jeff Neal tried to take this down, I suppose, because, he's going to be more willing to, try to get into the clinch and stuff like that, especially if Carlos has probably a pretty big reach on him. He's going to be the longer fighter. He fights longer. And I think Carlos Prates knocks this guy out. Honestly, Neal's a beast. Pretty durable fighter, all that. But the thing is Prates, these knees, if he goes to the body, it doesn't matter how big of a dog you are. And so I do think that Carlos Prates finishes this fight, and fight doesn't start round 3. Or just doesn't see the cards. And I'm gonna take Prates. I think, like I said, I think he knocks this guy out. And we will move on. Next fight we got coming up is Leron Murphy going against Aaron Pico. Pico, this is his debut fight, going against an undefeated guy in Leron Murphy. And for whatever reason, Pico's the favorite. I don't know. I'm a little bit confused. I watched some tape on this guy. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Leron Murphy. This guy is light-footed. He uses good movement and range management, clean fundamental boxing, educated guard. He uses feints and jab, nice backside teep kick, snappy low and side kicks, solid takedown defense, works to get up. He'll even threaten submissions and stuff like that to sweep and get back to his feet, so he doesn't accept bottom. He has good knees in the clinch, but his volume can be a little, that's kind of just his fighting style, because he does try to maintain range, and he'll kind of pick and poke, but mostly he's looking to counter and stuff like that. So volume definitely takes a hit when you fight like that. But he's going against a fairly aggressive guy. Pico seems to be pretty aggressive fighter. So let's pull this up. I don't know about it. Yeah. Flat-footed pressure striker, seems pretty aggressive. Boxing is okay. He uses a high guard, wide power punches, does throw a nasty body shot. Strong wrestler. control, and good ground and pound. I guess he could sneak in a submission, but, submission's not really his, he's probably a guy that, like, yeah, if it's there, he'll take it, but, he's not really focused on the submission. That's the way it seems. I think the dude's probably, yeah, he looks like a top-tier athlete and all that, but, fighting a top guy like Lerone Murphy that is proven, and it's just like his skill set. He's very well-rounded. I don't know that Pico's ready for that. I really actually don't think he is. I'm going to take Murphy. And he's an underdog, so you can just money line. You don't have to look at it any other way. It's hard to bank on Murphy to really get a knockout or anything like that. Let's pull this guy up. I think Pico's been knocked out, though, but let's see real quick. Yeah, decision, split. He has the knee, ground and pound, split, KO. So he's got some KOs in there, but, you just money line this guy because there's no reason to. Let's look at Pico. Dude's been knocked out 3 times, submitted once. Let's see, what is it? Okay, injury was one of the knockouts. Yeah, I'll just be looking to take Murphy. I'm not really looking at a method just because he's already an underdog. And I think that, his range management and technical striking is way superior to this guy. And so Pico's definitely going to be aggressive. But I think that Lerone's definitely got the footwork and athleticism to kind of keep him at bay. And I just think he wins this fight. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I am interested in Pico. I know very little of the guy. I haven't really seen him outside of some of the film I watched. And I'd like to see how his skill set matches up against the top, what is Murphy? He's like top 5 guy, isn't he? Oh, he's only 11. Yeah, I know. He's undefeated. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And then we're moving on to the main event of the evening. We got Dricus du Plessis going against Khamzat Chimaev. And, yeah, this is an exciting fight. A lot of people want to see this. You can tell right away that Chimaev has a huge fan base. This guy has an absolute huge fan base. People are crazy about this dude. Dricus is a guy that, I had a lot of belief and faith in this guy before many others did. I remember hearing, especially people that talk about it online and whatnot. A lot of people are just talking about how terrible this guy is, fundamentally, and how it looks on film and yada yada yada. And look at the dude. He's a champion. So let's pull up Dricus real quick and go over this. Fairly light-footed. He has solid range management. It's not like great, but it's decent. He switched stance. He has a kick-heavy attack at range. Almost everything comes off the switch. He has a high guard. Straight right and left side kick are probably his best weapons on the feet. He has some takedown ability, trips, headlock, hip toss, blast double, control, and he just kind of take whatever the opponent gives him. So the thing about Dricus is, to everyone's point, a lot of the stuff that he does doesn't really look that pretty. It kind of looks nasty on film. And I kind of agree. When you watch the film, it's not that pretty, but he is pretty effective, and because of his fighting style and because a lot of his stuff comes off the switch, it's I filmed a guy the other day. I don't remember exactly who it was, but I remember filming a guy the other day, and as a matter of fact, it was a main event from last week. It was what the heck's his name? Can't even think of his name. The Georgian. Delidze. He has this kind of same thing where, like, he comes off like it's almost like a step in, switch stance, and he would throw a cross, but it was almost like a jab because he switched stance. I don't know. It was something he did that was unorthodox, but it was effective. And Dricus does a lot of that. He does a lot of switching. You'll see him switching, and And because of that, it makes him very, very difficult to predict how he fights or, what's coming next, because he throws from all sorts of different weird stances and angles, and it's ugly, but it works, and then even his wrestling's the same way, where it's like, is it good? Like, no, it's not traditional. It's not pretty. It's very sloppy to some degree, but it's effective. You know what I mean? And one of the things about fighting is you have to be able to adapt. And that's what you know what I mean? It's hard to say he's adapting, but that's what he's doing. He's literally doing it on the fly. He's like literally just doing kind of whatever works. You know what I mean? He finds a way to make it work for him. And yeah, it's ugly, but it's effective. So I'd like to give him his flowers on that. I think Dricus is a pretty darn good fighter, And the other thing that I didn't even mention in here is that he has good power, and he has an ability to kind of fight through fatigue. And now let's go on to the other side and look at our boy Chimaev. Alright. So when we look at Khamzat Chimaev, he's fairly light-footed. He has pretty solid footwork himself. He also switches stances pretty well. Fights long. He has a nice teep kick, low kicks, jab, cross. Pretty good head movement. He's a very aggressive wrestling style. Can shoot from about anywhere. He has ground and pound to submission. Pretty solid back take. But his cardio doesn't really support his aggressive later in fight. And I don't know why I spell checked that. Boom, boom. Come on. Oh my gosh. I just want to fix this now. Later. Alright. Alright, so I think the way you look at this is, you just go Chimaev round one. Finish, probably submission, but you can probably just look at the round one. But he's a pretty big favorite. I think he's like a minus 220 or something like that. You'd probably look at the round one finish, and then I think outside the round one, it starts going towards Dricus. It's hard to predict what the outcome of that is. Now, what I want to do is go to Dricus real quick. I don't think Chimaev has the... I mean, even when you looked at the... one of his last... Hold on, real quick. Let me look at this real quick and see... Derek Brunson is the only real, kind of wrestler that he's gone against in the UFC. And, it's hard to compare Brunson to Chimaev, but definitely kind of more of a take you down and maul you style, and he lived through that and put the works on Derek. So, gives me a little bit of confidence. I don't think it's apples to apples necessarily. It's actually certainly not. But, that's a fight that I'd like to go back and watch and see how he does against the takedowns and whatnot. But let's pull up Chimaev real quick, because the guy hasn't been that active. Number one. This might be a hot take or an unpopular opinion. I remember watching the Gilbert Burns fight. I thought Gilbert won that fight. Maybe I'm wrong, but I really did think that he won that fight. It was a good fight. Kevin Holland, I think, took that fight on really, really short notice. It was like they swapped some stuff around to make that happen, because of Chimaev missing weight. I'm not exactly sure, but he ended up stepping in and taking that fight. And, because I think, Nate Diaz was actually supposed to fight. This is 2022. He fought once in 2023. That was Kamaru Usman. And this fight is one that I think really needs to be looked at a little bit more, like in the sense of, Kamaru fought up a weight class. He's a big dude, you know what I mean? But he fought up a weight class on super short notice in Abu Dhabi or whatever. And he's a great wrestler. So, I mean, it says a lot about Chimaev's wrestling ability that he was able to take him down in the first round and do what he did to Kamaru. But he wasn't able to finish him. He wasn't able to choke him out. And in round 2, he looked like a completely different fighter. He wasn't no aggressive wrestling. I think he eventually did shoot a takedown later in that round. But I think Dricus is going to be the much bigger guy. Like, he's going to be bigger than Kamaru. And so it'll definitely be an interesting fight. I can't say one way or another. I'm going to lean with, like I said, I think Khamzat, round 1, that's very possible that he could, get the takedown and get some ground and pound or get the back take and get a submission. But, when we go to the more recent fight of Robert Whittaker, the other thing that I want to point out is that while he did get the face crank or whatever, and he, kind of crushed his chin or whatever, however you want to say that, pushed his teeth in. Yeah, it looks nasty, but like, this is where, as a fan, recency bias comes into play, because you see that and you think, oh man, he really did that. But we don't know, Whittaker could have had some pre-existing things going on in that area for all we really truly know. And, he tapped him out. He tapped out as soon as it happened, you know what I mean? It wasn't like he choked him out. And Robert was able to, he survived quite a while in that. And so I truly believe that Dricus is going to be able to survive that first round, and he's going to be able to start taking over, midway through the second or, the start of the 3. So I could see a world where Chimaev wins round 1, possibly round 2, and then Dricus actually gets 3, 4, and 5 and wins either a decision, or actually, he does have a pretty unique ability of finishing fights, especially later in the fight. And so I could see him even getting a finish himself. So ultimately, it's a tough fight to call. When you get to the top level guys like this, these are both very, very well-rounded and skilled fighters, and there's not a huge discrepancy one way or another. I would take Chimaev's wrestling obviously over Dricus's, but I would take Dricus's cardio and just well-roundedness and just kind of adaptability, I think, over Chimaev. And so I'm going to probably go out on a limb and say Dricus. I think Dricus either wins by decision or finds a late finish. But I'm going to be realistic in the fact that Chimaev could obviously get a round 1 finish himself. So that's where I lean with the fight. This is kind of how I see it all playing out. And let me know what you think. Give me a like, subscribe. We're really trying to grow this page. If we can get it up to 50 subscribers, that'll give us the ability to go live and look to do different things. So I look to try to grow this page, and please just give your boy a little bit of support, and we're going to grow this thing. This is going to be the one-stop shop or one-shop stop or whatever the hell it is. We're going to be the go-to for breaking down these fighters, giving the best breakdowns that we possibly can. And ultimately, it's up to you to take those breakdowns and figure out how you think those fights are going to play out. Best of luck to everyone, and enjoy the fights, okay? See you guys next time. Peace out.